The artificial eye in the sky. Without a moment's hesitation, Donna switched on her desktop computer and offered for Steve and his sister Laura to sit down on the only available space in her studio apartment, which just so happened to be the end of her mussed-up bed. At age 15, Laura didn't care so much about dirty clothes or bed sheets, so she sat Indian-style in the corner with her hands propped under her chin. She waited as the program booted up on Donna's computer, which was still a black screen at that point with a spinning loading wheel. Steve stood by with his arms crossed as Donna sat down in her swivel chair, rocking with anticipation and checking a few things on her smartphone as her desktop swam into focus, sporting a bland desktop image of a cornfield at sunset. Donna, age 35, painstakingly tied back her black hair as long as her shoulders and rolled up the sleeves on her baggy sweatshirt. Her eyes kept darting to the sleek piece of silver plastic set atop her desk beside her unused keyboard full of rainbow lights. It looked like a normal router, and it even had a few diodes that flashed on the front of it, but it did not appear to be plugged into anything. Steve, 35, waited with a tapping sneaker on Donna's faux wood floor as a window popped up on Donna's computer screen, black at first and then developing with a grainy security image inside an enclosed space that hummed with loud reverberations and flickered with a poor abundance of light. Steve scratched absently at his ginger beard and exchanged looks with Laura, who couldn't have appeared to be more excited to be there. "So that's it then?" Steve asked, indicating the silvered device on her desk. "That's what's rendering the hologram?" Donna began to type then, answering over her shoulder. "It's the receiver to its counterpart, yes. The device I placed in the seat is rendering my likeness. This one here is receiving the signal so we can see everything that she sees." "Won't people start to be suspicious when your likeness doesn't respond to anyone?" Steve pressed on. "She's sitting in the window seat," Donna said matter-of-factly, "and even though we're seeing through her eyes, I programmed them to be closed. She shouldn't be bothered." The image on the computer screen was clear enough that all three of them could see the top of the plane seat directly in front of the camera view, as well as the tops of the heads of several passengers in the next rows. The picture wasn't great, but they could tell from the noise and the bumping drink cart that the plane was already in the air. "How did you leave the projector in the seat and then get off the plane?" Laura asked skeptically. "It just doesn't sound like that would work." Donna scoffed and swung around in her chair to face Steve's younger sister. "Steve should have really asked me if he had a guest coming," she said coolly, firing her next glare in Steve's direction. He sighed as he looked around for a new place to sit, settling for the nightstand by the bed, which he managed to clear of its empty plastic bottles with a swipe of its hand, sending them toppling into the overflowing laundry basket right beside it. Donna did not seem to care about this, or that her nightstand was visibly buckling under Steve's gross weight. She had her own belly that she was trying to conceal under all those layers of clothes, and her chair squeaked incessantly as she sat up to look Laura square in the eyes. "You only think it's impossible to leave a plane after boarding because you've never tried it," she sneered. "I sat down for a moment with the projector, fired up the program, and got up to ask the flight attendant if I could leave to grab my bag that I left outside. My hologram was sitting in my chair fast asleep when they did their head count, so there was no reason to be suspicious that I didn't return." "We stand corrected," Steve said on behalf of Laura, who was too busy studying the screen again to care about Donna's suspicious glare directed at them both. "Can your algorithm predict my future too?" Laura asked suddenly. Donna was facing the computer again and clacking the keys with added gusto that Steve thought was a bit too much. "My algorithm, you mean?" she scoffed. "The one I coded according to my own biometric data? No, it can only see my future. And the double I've created to take my own likeness can only act within the constraints of my own limitations." "So, what is it exactly your AI program predicted?" Steve said from the other end of the bed. "It's more than a prediction," Donna snapped. "It is a logical summation. It will happen, but the program is still working on its specificity. Right now it works in generalizations. I go to my algorithm every time I'm going out of town to meet investors or project teammates. You know how much I hate to fly, but the program has always given me the green light with the usual safe travels are forecasted. But this time, which is why I've called you here, I received the responding message. Your plane will not reach its destination." "Can't you ask it a follow-up question or something?" Steve replied, somewhat annoyed. "You can, and I did. It works in generalizations for now, like I said. All it kept repeating is, your plane will not reach its destination." "That could mean just about anything, though," Laura chimed in. "What exactly are you expecting to see?" "What are you expecting to see?" Donna challenged. She smiled provokingly at the teen. "Why did you tag along with your brother so bright-eyed and perky? You're waiting to see a plane crash from the inside, are you not?" Laura's face quickly fell. "I wanted to see your AI hologram, not a plane crash. If it's true it might crash, why didn't you tell someone? Why didn't you warn the people on that plane?" Donna barked laughter and returned to her typing. A red circular light appeared in the corner of the pop-up window, and they knew she was now recording the footage. Do you really think that would have done any good? I would have been laughed off that plane. No, better be safe and watch everything here from home. If nothing happens, great, a plane full of people are alive. But if it's correct, then my algorithm is ready for mass market testing. And think about the views I'll get online with this little footage. I'll be viral. That's sick, even for you, Steve muttered. You're here, aren't you? Just like your sister. Don't virtue signal to me. It's like a car wreck. You can't look away. Just admit your human nature and I'll allow you to stay and watch. I'm only here to say I told you so when that plane lands in Dallas, Steve shot back with real fire this time. There's no way anything's going to happen. Do you know how many flights there are a day? This didn't affect Donna in the slightest as she flipped the hood of her sweatshirt over her head and focused in on the camera view. With a tap of the arrow keys on her keyboard, she could adjust the view of her avatar and look around the cabin. It was a late-night flight, before sunset, but most people looked like they were nodding off or pretending to sleep. A lot of the shades had been pulled down over the windows, which explained why their view was so murky, but someone switched on their overhead lights somewhere in front, and they could better see the front of the cabin. They were only a few rows back, and some generic sitcom was playing on an oversized screen suspended from the ceiling. How far in the flight are they? Laura asked. They should be halfway there. Halfway there, so another hour, Steve answered. Laura had quickly lost her antsy anticipation and gleam in her eyes. She was now standing up, cracking her back and looking at her phone. What's the matter? Watching fiber optic camera footage from an AI digital projection? Remotely transmitted from a moving plane down to our current location? Not enough excitement for you? Donna said without looking away from the computer screen. No, it's impressive and all. It's just another hour? Just to watch the plane land and someone confiscate your expensive projector? It's money well spent, and no one will be confiscating anything, Donna replied shortly. You can leave if you want. Maybe you'll see the footage later tonight when I post it, if it doesn't get pulled first. Who wants to watch a plane fall out of the sky? Laura demanded. Everybody, Donna proclaimed. A ding resounded from the loudspeakers inside the plane, and the pilot's voice came on. It was muffled and drawling, and even with the volume turned all the way up on Donna's computer, they could not make out a word he said. What they did hear were the frustrated moans and loud shouts of passengers on the plane. One of the nearest neighbors to Donna's AI double posed a question to her seatmate, as she also seemed to have struggled to catch any meaning from the loudspeakers, or she had been shaken awake by the loud dinging ending the transmission. He said we're making an emergency landing due to a malfunction with their fuel gauge or something, the bald man sitting directly in front of them cried out. They probably forgot to put fuel in the damn thing with how little they pay these crews. Ha! Steve shouted, bursting up to his own feet to stand by his sister, who was no longer looking at her phone but bent over and glaring into the computer screen like Donna. I knew there was a reason for that prediction. See, your plane won't reach its destination. It can't be the reason, Donna hissed, blowing up the window to full screen so she could look all around the cabin. Steve thought it must look strange for her AI double to be moving its head back and forth with closed eyes. Just admit that you won't be seeing your burning wreck porn tonight, Steve said. Come on, Laura, let's get you home. I don't even know why I told you about any of this. Wait, Laura said, resisting his tug on the arm. What if she's right? It's just an emergency landing. I'm sure it'll have to get the passengers to their destination eventually, right? Yeah, probably in another plane, her brother insisted. This plane won't be reaching its destination. I'll at least give your computer credit for predicting that much, Donna. Shut up, the hooded woman snapped at the computer. Just because you can't take... I said shut up, she screamed, pushing away from the computer so that her chair rolled across the floor and ricocheted off the farthest wall. She was up and pointing at the screen now, which had visibly changed. It was no longer dimly lit, but awash with blue floodlights. The three of them gathered around the computer and followed the swivel of Donna's camera as she looked back and forth. Everyone was missing from the plane now. The drink cart sat empty in the aisle, and they were all shocked to see that they could view the clouds trailing by through the paper-thin walls of the airplane, which no longer seemed to be solid but made of glass. It was as if everything had crystallized, including the seats, which were also see-through and resembled ice sculptures. What the fuck is going on? Laura begged, but neither had the voice to respond. Their eyes were glued to the front of the cabin as the pilot's door opened and two figures appeared. They strode across the transparent aisle toward their shaking camera, and all three of them screamed out when they saw that these weren't the figures of men, but two naked, grinning skeletons. All of their bones intact and their joints grinding as they stepped closer, their empty eye sockets set on Donna's seat by the window. Skeletal fingers wrapped around the top of the seat in front of them, and the skull leaned in as close to the hologram as it dared, its teeth clicking together audibly. It glowed in the ambient blue light, and its hand reached down into the seat, fiddling with something. A button was depressed, something beeped, and the skull grinned at them one final time before the footage flickered out. Donna picked up the receiver and raised it above her head as if to smash it on the ground. Steve grabbed her arms and struggled with her there in front of the dark computer. "Whoa, what the hell are you doing?" Steve cried, wrestling the receiver out of her hands and holding it above his own head at a height she couldn't reach. "What will destroying this prove? You gotta show this to the authorities. Someone. They have to see your footage. Maybe they can trace the signal to the plane using this." "Them tracing that signal is what I'm most afraid of, you fucking moron," Donna yelled. She tried to jump to grab the device from his hand, but he had his heart set on playing defense and extending his arm even farther. "You idiot!" she screamed, tearing across her room and righting her chair so that she could stand on the seat. She was reaching up to the ceiling, where another projector had been drilled into the corner. Steve and Laura were noticing for the first time the nice little home theater she had going for such a small apartment, where the projector would cast its movie magic onto the blank wall opposite. She was hanging off the projector now, attempting to rip it from the ceiling. But the wheels on her computer chair were slipping, and Laura had to spring over to steady her as she prepared to fall. "Stop! You're going to kill yourself, Donna!" Steve cried out, but he wasn't letting go of the receiver in his hands. "I synced this projector with that receiver," Donna growled, out of breath and dripping with sweat. "As a test run, I projected my AI girl in this room, through this mount. It's still synced." "What's going on?" Laura shrieked. The projector was humming now, the fan whirring and white light filling its lens. "No, no!" This was the last thing Donna said before she jumped down from the chair onto her hands and knees, crawling for the door. In the process of leaping, the chair had kicked out from under her, knocking the wind out of Laura and sending her in the chair to the floor to join Donna on her mad dash for the exit. The receiver in Steve's hand became so hot that he finally dropped it, letting it bounce and slide across the floor to rest beneath the computer desk. The light in the projector's lens had now filled the room, and the images that were cast from the mounted piece of equipment in the ceiling were not projected on the empty wall, but in the room with them. 7-foot-tall skeletons of gray, pock-holed bones that did not appear to be transparent like a hologram, but solid. There were 3 of them, one for each of the occupants in the room, and they quickly split up, one bending down over Donna and slamming her head into the floor until she was still, another striding across the room in 2 giant steps to place a bony, open palm over Laura's screaming face, and the final one ambling towards Steve with that same dead grin full of teeth it gave them from the invisible plane in the sky. Steve bounded over the bed, colliding with the nightstand and grappling with the window. He couldn't see where the window or the wall began, as the walls were growing transparent, just like the airplane's metal shell. And he could see the alleyway beyond, just a short 2-story drop to the pavement below, and he was more than willing to take his chances. The bony fingers were wrapping around the back of his neck now, as cold as ice picks, and he threw himself, taking the giant with him, into the window glass. The thing's skull connected with the pane and cracked it. It was lifting him off the ground now by the throat, but he kicked off the nightstand with both feet and drove the skeleton's skull once again into the glass, smashing the window and causing them both to be thrown into the wall in a vacuum of air that stole Steve's breath and caused a good collection of the creature's bones to be sucked out the window. Through the transparent floor and ceiling, he could no longer see the alleyway, but stacks and decks of endless clouds and darkening sky, twinkling with the first beginnings of stars. Somehow the room had been superimposed with the airplane, as if the skeletons weren't fully there in either locations, but half present in both. And Steve didn't think he belonged in either one either. The thing came at him with half a ribcage, one rattling arm, and a clattering jaw. But Steve had already dug his palms into the pieces of glass on the sill and pushed himself up and out, the claws grappling with his pant leg as he dove headfirst into the roaring wind tunnel. He fell through masses of clouds below him, carried by the jet stream forward like a superhero, but inevitable in his downward trajectory towards the unseen earth. As he plummeted through the blankets of clouds, he couldn't help but comment on how warm they seemed to be, like breathy smothers of heat, completely devoid of moisture. In all that thrashing madness through the air, without a grounding instinct for his down or up directions, he peered out directly in front of him at the plane that would never reach its destination. No longer transparent but plummeting wing over tail through the sky until it was obscured by the clouds. As he fell, Steve waited for the fireball, and he could only hope that the explosion would consume him before the earth slammed up to meet him. Somehow he preferred the fire.